22nd. It's 6:32 in the evening. This is a meeting of the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee. We are meeting both in person and in a hybrid fashion. We're going to do a roll. I need to announce who is online, correct, Rachel? Okay. And as well as then we'll do a roll call around the room. The governor's provision lets us meet in this hybrid fashion. So in the room on the committee, we have Ms. Coelho.
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson is not in attendance this evening. We have our citizen representatives, Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Mr. Manzo.
Here.
Ms. Ducharme.
Here.
Also in the room, we have Jean Sherburne. Here. We have Dr. Trocheck. Here. We have a few guests who will be introduced very soon. Miss Abel is hosting our Zoom meeting for us. BevCam, thank you very much. And online, we have Christina Leal, Director of Food Services. And Rachel, if somebody else comes in the door, we'll let them in. Julie Flowers is also attending remotely. Okay, so I am sharing my screen and I have the agenda up. And the first order of business is approval of the meeting minutes from what seems like forever ago, last June, at the end of the school year, June 23rd. I'm looking for a motion to approve those.
I'll make that motion.
I think we need to.
What?
Can I just mention one edit? I think I wasn't here, but I think there's reference on the minutes to Rachel being present. Let me just find it.
All right, but wait, because we can open discussion after we get a motion and a second. All right, so we have a motion from Ms. Coelho. Do I
Yes.
have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. And now discussion. Yes, Ms. Ducharme. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I noticed that there was a section on here that talked about remote participants. School committee member Rachel Abel. I think she opened it because maybe she was using her account to host it, but I don't think she was actually remote participating in the last FNF.
That is correct. Excellent.
Oh, right, yeah, also not in the committee.
You're just the technology support.
Sorry about
We
the
do
order of my
appreciate the
comments.
technology support. Ms. Abel and I, for a long time, both had Zoom accounts, and so I'm trying to get rid of mine and then just consolidate those costs to just have one. All right, so we'll fix that. Ms. Curran, did you get that? All right. Any other edits or corrections? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
I just wanted to say that I wasn't here.
You were not here, and you're listed as having been here?
I wasn't listed as anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so Ms. Curran, can we add Mr. Manzo, 2 members absent? If I recall correctly, you were visiting the big blue house.
Where was I? I think I was hiking.
Okay. All right, any other corrections, omissions, additions? Anybody? All right, there's a motion on the table. There's a second. All those in favor? Okay, that's going to pass 3-0 to 2 abstentions. 3 yes, 0 no, 2 abstentions. Okay. Our next order of business is the Bng Report, and we are blessed this evening to have Mr. Collins in attendance. So in the audience, we have Mr. Collins. Do we have an extra mic for him?
I brought one over there for him.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Collins, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for having us here tonight, and my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Bob Shiroli, our new Director of the Public Schools Division. Bob joined us on the 20th of August full-time. He was able to work 1 day a week for a good portion of the summer while he tied up loose ends on his old job in another school district that we stole him from, and comes with a long list of qualifications and highly recommended by a number of people, and so far proved to be an excellent fit for us. He's had the disadvantage of starting on the 20th of August, which puts him under a significant time crunch, so we had to do a lot of the summer routine, which this year was highly compressed. We're grateful that the schools are so well used in the summer, but it makes our summer routine really difficult. It doesn't leave a lot of time to strip and wax all the floors and wash all the carpets and completely disassemble the schools and put them back together in the span of, we normally have 2 months to do that. In some cases, we had about 2 weeks of spare time once all the programs wrapped up. So I'll let Bob introduce himself, and we can answer any questions you have of what we did this summer.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Just want to say hello to everyone. My name's Bob Stroley. Been here about a month, and everything's been going great so far. A lot to learn, but I look forward to working with you guys and Beverly Public Schools.
Okay, so for everybody who was here at our last meeting in June, Mr. Collins announced that the offer had been put out, and I think at that point in time, you had accepted the offer. We just didn't get to see you, so we're happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Does anybody, and can your name again, Shiroli?
Shiroli. Yep.
Shiroli. That's going to roll right off my tongue. Does anybody have any questions for our new director of a title?
Public Schools Division.
Public Schools Division.
Yes.
Then do I get to put of Bng at the end?
But you and I will say B&G.
Okay, Bng.
Whatever we're easy. We answer to anything.
Yeah.
All right. So does anybody have any questions for Director Shiroli? No? Oh, yes, Mr. Manzo?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
I'll just extend a welcome from the rest of us as well. I know you've got a good staff working for you and good support from above as well, and also from the school district. And so I hope you enjoy your time in the Beverly Public Schools, and I hope you're as impressed with the buildings that fall into your purview that as impressed as we are, because we really love these schools.
No, definitely. I appreciate that.
So thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Did you have your hand up?
I'm just going to say welcome and thank you, and I thank you to the words right out of my mouth. So thank you for taking such great care of our schools.
No worries. Thank you.
Welcome.
The Bng Report? Yes. Okay. So don't leave that lovely podium. I am going to pull up on my screen the Bng Report, and then we'll, I say we're going to pull up the Bng Report. I don't need to know who can see the live transcript.
It came after.
Yes, I have it.
Yeah.
So, all right, so on my screen, I'll scroll through pretty quickly just to let everybody know. It's a short 2 pages. Bulleted lists for the district-wide items. Hopefully, I don't know if our font is big enough to see well at home, and then each of the schools.
It's an amazing amount of work that get packed into 2 pages there, but I'd be remiss in not mentioning how hard the staff worked this summer. Like, again, it's great to see the schools used all summer, but it makes the custodians' jobs a lot harder. And they did a great job. They turned the schools around like they always do. And as there was last summer, and really as there was in prior years, but with a renewed focus due to COVID, there was a huge amount of work went into recommissioning all the HVAC equipment in all the schools and making sure every last actuator and damper was working perfectly and doing exactly what we want it to do. And there's a lot of moving parts in any one school building, times 8. So it was a lot of work, and a lot of staff put in a lot of hours, literally 7 days a week, to try to make sure everything is in perfect working order.
And so this might be a question, and then I'll open it up to everybody else. For you, Jean, it might be a combination question. I know, for instance, this building was used for the camp invention. Can you give us some kind of sense of what the buildings across the district were used for all summer?
Yes, so I'm going
General
to defer
gist.
to Dr. Shirocek, who knows of all of the summer programs that
Right
we
up
had
there.
going on.
So, like no other year, we had robust programming in all of our buildings. I think that is what was unique to this year. Many years, we have a summer program in one building and the preschool program in another, and maybe summer literacy in a third. This year, in each and every one of our schools, we had acceleration camps going on, and so those acceleration camps were really designed to help bring back into the fold students who had had a lot of missed opportunities. In some cases, we focused on students who are RLA. In some cases, we made invitations to people whose learning loss were significantly impacted. So at the high school, we ran our regular summer school. We ran an acceleration academy for math for freshmen, rising sophomores. We ran, and then we had some of the other transition programs into the high school. At the middle school, we ran our full summer program for special education, so our extended school year program, as well as Acceleration Academy for math for 2 weeks. And that was for rising 8th graders. We ran at each one of the elementary schools over a 2-week period at different points, the acceleration camps for students in those buildings. And in addition, at the Hannah School, they ran a 5-week summer program of their own for Acceleration Academy, and then they also housed the summer literacy program that we've run every year at the Hannah Elementary School. And then at the preschool, we ran our preschool program. So in all 8 of our buildings, we had a lot of activity and a lot of students coming and going. So
Fantastic.
I believe that at Sissel, Dot's going to do a recap of the summer programming in a different way, or she may have in the last meeting. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. But it was more programming than we've ever had. We also had as you mentioned, the Invention Convention, or we have that here. We ran that one early this year. Typically, that's later in the summer. That one ran, I believe, the last week of June. Did that one run I think it ran in June this year.
2 sessions.
Yeah, so we were and as well as serving food. So we served lunches out of both the middle school and the high school, and at all of the playgrounds. And so the kitchens were busy preparing meals and getting them ready to be distributed throughout the city. So we were very robust, active buildings all summer long.
Fantastic. I think that the average community member doesn't realize that even our normal programming, such as the literacy camp, takes place at the Hannah School usually. Or necessarily even the food, right? And we've talked a lot about Christina and her department doing all that work, but especially where Mr. Collins was talking about it and saying, we threw our new director into the frying pan right off the get-go. I thought it would be good if we kind of reviewed what all happened in the building since we were last here.
Right.
All right, so yes, Lindsay. Oh, Ms. Ducharme, sorry.
That's okay, thank you. So my daughter did the Parks and Rec camp at the back of Hannah, and she loved it. She had the best time. Also was grateful to come home with some of those lunches. Also did, I think, the literacy program that I think Gabrielle Montevecchi might have gotten a grant for that, separate from the mayor's program, if I remember right.
Yeah,
Or
so that was each one of our elementary schools, we got a $136,000 grant from the Department of Ed to run acceleration camps for our students.
okay, so those are the
And so
same.
those were
Okay.
them. And so every building was able to structure theirs however they did it. Some had 2 different weeks. There were specific standards that they had to address, and they had some specifics as to how they had to run them. They were educators from our own district that were teaching them, which was really, really exciting and a great opportunity for a lot of our kids who had not had the opportunity to be in school as much as they were. So
My oldest was here at the middle school for the literacy as well. So
Yep.
I think my kids, between the 3 of those things, my kids had probably the best summer they've had in a long time. So thank you.
they were the teachers. I mean, the teachers worked super hard in doing it, but they were also fun. I mean, we really tried to put an emphasis on STEM and put an emphasis on some of the other things to kind of incorporate the learning in. So it was a really nice experience.
All right, so does anyone have any questions for our new director of Beverly Public Schools, B&G? I'm making that title up. I'm totally adding of B&G at the end.
The B&G.
All right, or how about any questions on the B&G report? Yes, Mr.
I
Manzo.
just want to say that, just so that anyone's watching at home, it sounds like you guys spent considerable amount of time on the HVAC systems in all the buildings, and that they're all operating to specs.
Yeah, really, I think that they're honestly in better condition than when the buildings were delivered to us, because we go into such great detail when we recommission the individual devices, that we picked up a lot of, over the years, you pick up a lot of, minor construction defects where things were just maybe not done 100% to our standards. So really, I think that we're operating better than delivered condition, and certainly we've been able to retrofit all the elementary schools over the years with new HVAC controls, which they weren't built with, which gives us much more granular control over each piece of equipment. Gives us real-time monitoring and tells us there's alarms that are sent to us when things stop working. So really puts us in a good position to know the status of each room and whether or not things are doing what we want them to do. So yeah, we're in very good shape.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
All right, so this is the part of the meeting where you get to run away. You're free to go. You're
Thank you.
encouraged to do so.
Thank you.
We don't
Thank
want
you
to
very
torture
much.
you any more than you have to be tortured. Okay, next item on our report falls under gifts to schools. I have it, okay, here we go. Are we
Yes,
good?
my administration update.
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
maybe make our font a little bigger, okay?
There you go.
Are you good?
So what we plan, our plan is for this evening is to discuss, first of all, the Director of Public Schools Division that we just met. We have a wall ball donation that's going to be at BHS, a new position for food service, and to talk about the FY22 financial reports. So I did have a little picture of Bob here, but we've already met him and just talked
Didn't
about
look
the-
like that 'cause of his
vast. Yes, that's what he looks like without his mask. And he does have a vast knowledge of facilities management coming here. And he has, started right away with hitting the ground running. So, and he was the one that did do our report, so.
Excellent.
So the next item I have, and I'm going to ask Mr. Silva to help me out a little bit on this, but this central office administration, along with the high school administration, met with the lacrosse boosters to discuss the proposed placement of the wall ball structure on the high school property that they would like to donate. So what we're going to be looking for tonight is for the committee to accept the donation of a goods versus putting it in the monetary gifts for schools. What we did is, we talked about this back in June, I believe it was June, may have been May, that we talked about we were going to have a meeting with the athletic director, the high school administration, central office, buildings and grounds, and Mike Collins was present at this meeting. During this meeting, we looked at the many different areas that we could actually place the item. And then with further discussion, we made a decision of that it was going to be placed on the high school, in the back parking lot, nearest the,
Just outside the locker room, as you enter into the fields, there's a little notched area of grass near the electrical box.
yeah, and Mike Collins has said that the grounds department will be able to prepare the area for the location for the delivery, and now the lacrosse boosters can go out and fundraise for this. So that was what they're looking for us to say, yes, we're going to accept it before they go through their fundraising efforts.
Okay.
Did I catch everything?
Yes,
I think so.
thank you.
Okay, so I will ask for a motion to accept this wonderful donation from the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second,
My second.
thank you, Ms. Ducharme. We have a motion, we have a second, so it's open for discussion. I'll pile on to what Ms. Sherburne said, and that we looked at a lot of different plans at a previous meeting. That meeting's recorded somewhere on BevCam. Thank you, BevCam. And where Mr. Silva presented a plethora of possible locations. And so at this point in time, the school administration is fine with this, but from a dot your i's, cross your t's point of view, this committee and then the committee of the whole needs to approve.
Approve the acceptance
From a
of the-
process point of view, that's where we are. So given that our administration is in support of this, we have a motion on the table. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
Just one question and a comment, Jeff. Remind me, how big is this wall ball structure again? Approximate.
It will be two of these units, they're 6 foot, each unit is 6 foot wide, so 12 linear feet across. The base itself is approximately 4 feet, and the height is 18 feet.
Good. And so about how many athletes could you have working on this wall at any one time?
4 on each side.
4 on each side. And so it's in a
Maybe
placement
3
so that you
youth
can actually
people
get,
maybe 3 youth kids on each side.
okay. And there's enough area around it, you can actually use both sides of it?
Yes.
Well, good. And I just wanted to say thanks to Jeff and lacrosse boosters for making the effort and recognizing a need and helping out. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You want to say anything else?
It's been, I appreciate the process that we went through, the discussion, going through the options, getting everyone together to sort of openly discuss and come up with a plan that works for everyone. So thank you for the school committee, and the city officials that were very supportive. And, on behalf of the lacrosse program, the president of the BYL was there as well in that meeting. So all of the different programs appreciate having this accessible because in order to really improve the skills, having a surface for them to bounce the ball up against the wall is important. So thank you.
Ms. Coelho, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Forgive me if I am forgetful on this, but did we decide on a proper location to put this so kids won't be trying to hide behind it?
We didn't, but the administration did. So there was a meeting, there was in between the last time we were all here talking about this and this meeting, the athletic director,
High school principal, so it was the athletic director, high school principal, Mr. Collins, Mr. Silva, and Mr.
Skuse.
Myself.
Rachel.
And
'Cause I
Ms.
couldn't
Abel were
go.
all there, and we, I want to also thank you for your patience, because it took us, we had quite a few reschedulings to try to get the group together. But I actually think that, as Mr. Silva said, we had a really great discussion. We looked at the Google Maps scheme, and we contemplated a number of different spots. Mrs. Taylor was able to express her consideration around making sure that the security cameras were able to adequately make sure that we could monitor the campus area. We thought about traffic, we thought about we thought about all of those things. So I think having everyone in the room at one time made it pretty easy. And then once we found it, I think it was like a natural spot. So I think we all feel pretty good about where it's going to end up and how it's going to work.
So for those of you who are somewhat familiar with the high school campus, if you were coming from Dairy Queen and you came in that back road and you're looking at the locker room doors, or way to the left is the food service and the loading dock. The building stops, cuts in, bumps back out, the field house bumps back out, and there's actually a door back in there in that inner corner. And so that's the area, that bump out with some grass right there is the area, if I understand it correctly, where the administration agreed that it can go. That way it's not jutting out, because as Mr. Manzo pointed out, some of the other locations that were proposed out closer to the turf field might have gotten in the way of the soccer practices or some other sport, and we wouldn't want anybody running into it while they were trying to practice. So, Ms. Ducharme, did you have your hand up for a question?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's probably more for Dr. Trocheck. So, and maybe this is something you guys flushed through in conversation, because you mentioned that you talked about traffic and stuff. I know because of the traffic at the middle school, we're using the high school for one of the main. So when is it most likely to be used? And is the amount of students using it gonna, I just think about the cars going in and out of there. Maybe I'm not picturing it in the right spot.
It's not on the road. It's not on the roadway. It's set
back
back
enough.
in on the grass, so it's not. You'd have to know where the kids typically come out of the locker room and walk across the parking lot and then enter into the field. So it's sort of right up the front. It would not interfere with traffic. Student use, I mean, I think that Mr. Keefe was super excited about the opportunity for both the soccer and the lacrosse players to be able to access it at different times. I know the youth will be using it on the weekend, and it's not really close to where the middle school drop-off spot is. That's a little further over by Russell Street and the tennis courts.
Yeah.
This is further over by the soccer fields.
Oh, okay. You're right. I was picturing it on the other side. Thank you.
Okay, so before we take a vote, I'm going to strongly suggest, Mr. Silva, that you recuse yourself from this vote, given that you're involved in the proposal coming forward.
That's fine.
All right, any further discussion? All right, there's a motion on the table to accept this wonderful donation from the lacrosse boosters. All those in favor? All right, that passes 4-0. Well, 4-0 to 1 abstention. All right, am I scrolling, Jean?
Yes. I'm going to be outlining these. I actually have this as a separate document later on in regards to the, acceptance of the grants. Right here, I'm just going to be talking about what we're going to be voting on, or we can vote on it, and when that comes time to pull that document up, it's the same thing. So what I was bringing forth is the FY22 Department of Education grant allocations to the Beverly Public Schools. And these are, most of them are repeating grants that we normally have, except we do have a couple that are American Rescue Plan, which is kind of like the COVID funding. So I'm looking forward, looking for approval of this. I can do it now, and then when we get down later on, it's on a separate document.
Right.
But what we have is the 252 and the 264 are special education opera grants is what they're calling them. The 262 is the early childhood education grant. That's an entitlement grant, which we receive each year. The Esser 3 grant, which is grant number 119, that is being in the process of being written right now for $4,741,000, and that's the third of the Essers. As you recall, we had Esser 1 and 2 approved last year. The 240 grant is a special education entitlement grant. The grant 400 is the Perkins, which is the career and technical education grant. 305 is our Title I grant. Grant 140 is the Title IIA. 180 is Title III, which is English language acquisition. And grant 309 is the Title IV grant. These are grants we generally get every year, and we're looking for approval of $7,404,894.
All right, so if we go back to, hold on one second, get out of annotate mode. If we go back to our agenda, accepting the grants and gifts to schools is down here underneath number 4.
Yes, yep.
So I'm just going to ask us, we're just, but it's also on spot C. 3.c, allocation.
Yes, yep.
Acceptance of the DESE. Okay, cool. So let's just do it now.
Okay.
I'm looking for a motion to accept all of these wonderful grants in the amount of $7,404,894. Ms. Ducharme, thank you for that motion. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Conversation now?
Yes, now it is open for discussion. Would you
So
like
what-
to discuss something, Jean?
Just one more thing I would just like to add is that ESSA 3 is more than a one-year grant.
Right,
So
right. So
I believe it's 2 years and a partial, like a fall, that we get to use it. So the
wants-
ESSER 3 grant, with the grant 119 for $4,741,978, that is, all of the ESSER grants are multi-year grants, but what you do is you accept it as it is, and we're writing it for, I believe it's FY 22, 23, and into
It
24,
ends
but
on
maybe
September
not the whole.
30th and 24th.
So, okay, yeah. So it's 2
so-
years and a couple months, and then when we write the grant, we will be writing it with our intentions of what would be this year and, the 2 years. If it's, when we did the ESSER 2, we put in their positions, 2-year positions, knowing that, so we'll do that when we write the grant.
So we're counting these eggs in our basket before we technically have them?
We have, it's an entitlement, so we have the money. We just have to tell them how we want to spend it.
Got it.
DESE can tell us, no, we want you to spend it a different way, or want further clarification on what you're exactly doing with the funding.
There's a list of allowable expenses, so we work off that. I would say that with the ESSER 3, we also have a requirement, but we also put out a survey looking for input from stakeholders and from families. And so we're in the process of doing that. We'll be applying for the grant. The grant is due October 4th, I think. just in what our intent to spend it on is. But again, it's a multi-year grant, and there are opportunities to kind of think about how we're using that money, so.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, Ms. Ducharme?
Thank you. That was the survey that went out recently, right? Okay, I thought that was the same. And then, Ms. Sherborne, did you say that 252 and 264 were the only new ones? So the other ones are ones that we get?
They're
and-
additional.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Silva?
The Esser Grant, can you just briefly describe what, that's a sizable grant, what the purpose of that is?
So there was the relief funds that were given to school districts to kind of mitigate the loss of learning and the challenges that the pandemic presented. Also, the allowable uses have a number of different uses. So ESSER 1 came in and we received that one. That was, I think we got $555,000. We utilized that for a lot of work on PPE, purchasing some of the things. We used some of the money in our remote learning academy. ESSER 2 also came in. That was $2.1 million. We've utilized that, added some positions in the district to lower class sizes in our primary grades. We used it for some of our summer programming. We used a lot of those things, and now ESSER 3 is in, and it has the same kind of uses. Anything that's eligible for under your entitlement grants, anything under IDEA, you're able to utilize those funds in that way. So every district got a different amount, but the formula in providing how much you got was based upon the way, the makeup of the district, the demographics, the, how much money you put into per pupil spending. There's a whole lot of factors that went into how they decided how much money each district got, and that's the amount that we are going to receive.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes, Ms. Ducharme?
I'm sorry, I have one more quick question. So 252, 264, and 240 are COVID sort of specific.
No, 240 is just a regular special education grant.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant 119, sorry. So 252, 264, and 119 are responsive to COVID grants, basically.
Responsive to
They fall under the American
pandemic, yeah.
Rescue Plan.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Any further discussion? Any further questions? Motion on the table in a second. All those in favor of accepting these grants? That passes 5-0, Ms. Curran. Here we go, Jean, we're scrolling.
And continuing on here, we do have Christina Leal on line to speak
is.
about this. But what the Director of Food Service is requesting a new position for the Food Service Department that will help the district. The position would be a registered dietitian. We've included the job description for the position here. It would be an individual contracted staff member working 205 days. That's how our individual contracts work on number of days. And the funding of this position and benefits would come from the food service revolving account, and they do have the funds available for that. And Ms. Leal can discuss what she thinks, this purpose of this position is.
Thank you. So the reason I'm really looking for a dietitian is someone to work with the nurses. We have a lot of kids with allergy meals, so that would help with developing allergy menus and things of that nature, as well as getting people to educate around diets and proper diet and getting in the classroom. There's just so much, we're serving so many meals that it's hard for me to kind of team up to teach about nutrition. I'm really looking for a dietitian because they have the credentials that they can treat or help. They have the qualifications to help people with diets, as opposed to a dietitian that can't recommend or speak to significant health conditions, which is why we're really looking for a dietitian to help in the district. If that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to accept this new position.
So moved.
Yes, so moved. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Second?
Second.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. And now that we have that, we'll open it up for discussion, for questions. Any questions for Ms. Leal? Mr. Silva?
I'm just wondering has there been a change in head count that has required another head count for this in that department?
Ms. Leal, are you able to hear the questions okay? Or do you need me to
I am,
repeat it?
yeah.
Okay.
So it's not so much a change in student enrollment, it's more a change in the allergens. We've seen such a skyrocket in students that have different allergies, and years past it was just peanut allergies, but now we're dealing with gluten allergies. We have celiac students. We have so many egg allergies. So it's just not so much the enrollment, but more of the amount of kids that actually have allergies now.
All right, can I want to rewind and say, Ms. Sherburne, will you state again where the funding source is coming from and maybe spell that out a little further? I believe you said it's coming from their food services revolving account.
Yes.
And I think that it's important that we talk about the fact that that account is self-sufficient.
Yes, yes.
Right?
The,
And so what that means is that the money that we bring in from people paying for meals, or in the case of we're
Reimbursement from
not
the government,
paying for
yeah.
meals right now, but we're getting reimbursed from the government.
Yeah.
All of that money comes in, it's in account specifically for food services.
only can be used for food service.
Only can be used for food services, and we have enough money in that account to add this position.
Yes,
So really, it's $0 to our district.
correct.
Okay, now, having said that, Ms. Ducharme, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's really to bring some better support services and maybe a sense of comfort to students and families with allergies, it sounds like. Could you talk maybe a little bit about what the impact might be to the menu? So are we going to have like kids that have allergy sensitivities? They're going to have different options for food in addition to all the education you're going to do around it, it sounds like.
So, right, and we don't want to change the menu drastically from what all the students are getting. So it would be very similar to what we're having now. If we have pizza when they're gluten-free, we would do a gluten-free pizza, but just kind of exploring more options that they can have, more products that are out there to fit the needs, because it may be gluten-free, but it might not be dairy-free or egg-free. So kind of streamlining it a little bit. And also they would help with menu development. We do have software. We do have criteria that we have to meet for the USDA. So it would definitely be helping with menu development as well, not just for allergies, but for all students.
Yes, Mr. Silva?
Is there state support that is provided as recommendations for these types of menus that you can refer to?
So there's training, allergy training, but there's not really a menu development. We do have different menu develop software programs that different districts use, but not so much menus for allergies.
Interesting. Okay, I'm looking for hands. Yes, Mr. Manzo?
So let me ask this question of you. So this, are we approving the position or the job description or both this evening?
Both.
Both, okay. And so in order to approve the position, we know where the money's coming from. Do we have a sense of a salary range that we're looking at for this position?
Yeah, Ms. Leal and I did talk about that. I don't recall.
So we were talking, I think, Jean, at 20 hours a week. So it would not be a full-time, it would be 20 hours a week at the range of $30 an hour at the 205 days. So it comes to right under $25,000 then if we add on benefits.
Yeah.
At 20 hours, we have to add on benefits,
Yes.
correct?
And then this is a district-wide position. That's the other thing we need to know is where this person's going to be. It's a district-wide position?
Yes, district-wide.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
You all set? Okay, so any other questions? All right, this is like last call. So I suppose what I stated for the motion should be clarified. So the motion is, and we'll retake it. I'm looking for a motion to approve both the job description and the position of a new food service department registered dietitian.
Yes.
Having restated that, who gave me that motion? Are you good with remotioning? Thank you. Who seconded that?
I did.
Are you good with reseconding?
I am.
Fantastic. Okay. Here's the vote. All those in favor? That passes 5-0. Oh, and Miss Flowers, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at all. I have not seen if you've raised your hand. She has not? Okay.
I have not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm really sorry. I just was so excited. So many people were in the room. All right.
I'm pretty sure Mrs. Abel was watching for me, so I'm totally fine.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay, so do we have any other slides in this
No,
presentation?
the last slide is just telling that we're going to be talking about any budget transfers, which there is one, so I'd like to make sure that we get that moved up to a vote before our
Okay.
time clock runs out.
Okay.
And then review of the revenues, expenses, and then we do have acceptance of the gifts that are monetary.
All right, let's go gifts to schools first, because I can find it. Because I can find it.
And I printed mine and left it at my
That's okay.
office.
Here we go. I really don't know. This is probably 50 things on my screen here, people. Hold on a second and I'll make it. We'll zoom it up. Hopefully people can see. We'll go zoom a little more. All right, so in general, Jean, do you want to, can you see the screen or no? Okay, how about I'll tell you that I'll zoom it a little more and then I'll tell you that in the, from Hannah, we have A+ rewards of $462.34. All right, that's a grocery store reward program. Our parents register, and when they grocery shop there, a certain percentage of what they spend comes back. Ohio Pile Royalty, donation of $21.87, and that's a district-wide. And then we have a set of donations from the Beverly Education Foundation, which come through via their yearly grants.
Yeah, and that was presented to the school committee in
Back in June. So those amounts are 800 Beverly High for advanced placement art, 840 for Beverly High college planning and essay writing, 400 at Ayers for a free little art gallery, 750 at Ayers for social emotional program, 613 at Ayers for creating a cultural library, 613 at Centerville for also a cultural library, 613 at Hannah for culture library, 452 at Hannah for creating a cultural library. I think that covers, nope. And then North Bev is getting 613 for creating a cultural library. 500 Centerville kids book about, what else have I missed? Hooray for Health at Hannah. I love the alliteration. $1,000 to Hannah for an outdoor learning structure. 1,000 to North Beverly for Long Hill Gardens place-based learning. And last but not least, 1,100 to the McEwen School for a phonemic toolkit for a total of $10,778.21. I'm looking for a motion to accept that wonderful gifts to schools as a whole. $10,778.21.
I'll make that motion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. A second? Thank you, Ms. Ducharme. Any comments, questions, discussion?
I actually do
Yes.
have one.
Yes.
So I see that all the elementary schools are getting $613, except for Hannah. They're getting $161 less for their cultural library.
May I address that? So in my infinite free time, one of the many roles that I play is I'm an advisor to the Beverly Education Foundation. So if you look at this list, you'll see that Hannah is getting 2 separate $1,000 grants for other programs. And so BevEd has a total amount of money that they have available to give out. So they occasionally partially fund a grant. So what they chose to do was partially fund that library one so that they could fund the other 2. It's like a totality. Hannah's getting $2,452. Their PTO can argue amongst themselves and shift that money around if they really wanted, I believe. But that one got partially funded because the other 2 got funded. So the total amount there is quite high compared to, like, if you look at North Bev, they're getting $1,600, right, total. Cove is only getting $613, period. So That, and again, that's all they submitted, potentially. I don't have the whole list in my head, but if a school only submits one grant, it can be either a teacher or the PTO submitting, asking Bev Ed to give them money for a program. And then every school sends a representative to Bev Ed, and then they vote on which ones to fund. Any other questions? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor of accepting $10,778.21 in gifts to schools, that passes 5-0. Transfers are next. Here we come. Transfers. Budget transfer.
So I have one transfer, transfer number 444 to be presented this evening, and these are transfers to salaries accounts. So as you know, that when we build the budget, we do not know who's stepping, who is moving columns, and we did not know what the percentage would be for the salary adjustment. And we are still negotiating Unit C, and there's some individual contracts that are still not done, but this is a bulk of what I needed to do. So what I do is I have a staffing pattern that tells us how many people we have in different positions based on their accounting, and this would be to balance out what we have hired for positions, and that would be increasing and/or decreasing the salary account lines to line up with that.
All right, so I'm looking, we'll open it up to discussion after we have a motion and a second on the table. Motion to accept this batch of transfers, batch number 444.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. How about a second, Ms. Coelho?
Second.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, questions for Jean on this incredibly big batch of transfers?
So one of the things I did want to add on to that is that some of the accounts may go up and down based on transfers of staff also. I forgot that little tidbit of it. So if somebody was a third grade teacher last year and this year they're going to be a second grade teacher, their salary would move salary accounts, and therefore that would be another reasoning for changes. I did have two little changes that I was actually doing my end of year report and made me pause for a minute. Excuse me, we do have some school adjustment counselors that are specifically just for special education, so that is reflected in here too. We've created an account that's a school adjustment counselor for special education, so it hits the end of the year report correctly, and therefore we had to adjust on Munis. So you may see one line where there's an adjustment counselor, there's a big decrease, but there's another line that there's an increase offsetting that.
So I've highlighted one of those on the screen because that was going to be my question for you. Because that makes me, when I read that line, it makes me think that we did not have an adjustment counselor at this school, and there's several such lines in this report.
Yep, so it was the Centerville, the middle school, and the high school that actually has them, and we had them, some of them we had even last year, and it wasn't till I was doing my end-of-year report that, at my end-of-year report, I have to report if it's a regular education expense or a special education expense, and that's where it was, the pause came and said, oh, wait a minute, we need to break that out, so might as well break it out so that each year we don't have to remember to do that little task.
Okay, so here's the high school. Here's the high school one. Oh, listen, that bell says we have school committee in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, questions? Yes, Ms. Ducharme.
Quick question. Is that the same as those special education adjustment counselors? Is that the REACH program? Is that the same or is that different? Do you know what I'm talking about at the middle school?
I think that the ones that she's talking about are specifically associated with the SSP program.
Yeah, they're associated with a specific sped.
Okay, so thank you. I thought that was me too.
So there will be more transfers next month as we come along and finalize the negotiations, but this is a bulk of them.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Silva.
So for the item 4, with the $65,000 adjustment, originally budgeted for 57, could you just talk through that? What that 65
Yes, so
is?
the school committee approved a budget and grants analyst for my department in the business office, and that's where that person will be housed.
Okay.
My annotation skills are a little less than wonderful. Yes, Mr. Manzo?
And so, Jean, there are a number of new positions in here as well, right? Because originally you talked about how we're adjusting salaries to meet contracts, but there are also a number of new positions in here,
Yes.
including the one you just mentioned.
Right, yes.
That's why some of these numbers are as big as they are.
Right, yes, yes. There's some new positions, some of them we were, so when we're still writing the Esser grant that we talked about earlier, so some of the funds, if we're able to absorb it in the budget as it is now, we would be able to do that and then write. So there's a lot of that fluctuation. So I was not able to present the additional positions that we have this year. That would be at a next meeting or two, that I'll have an overview of what we added, where the funding came from. But this was able to, so if you recall last year in our budget, we had remote learning teachers, so we had so many remote learning teachers. Well, that was funding that was coming out of the budget. So now when you don't have those, we knew that there was positions we wanted to add. That was one that, the budget and grants analyst was one that the superintendent put in. But we also had outreach counselors. I mean, there's so many, but I will be reporting all of that. But this would align so that our salaries being paid, our budget is aligned with that.
Okay, any further questions? All right, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor of approving this transfer number 444? That passes, Ms. Curran, 5-0.
The next thing that I'm going to bring up is, very briefly, is the revenue report. What's this one here?
I'm coming.
And this is showing you that our budget is $65,376,407. It's the first two lines, tells us there. It also tells us in the first column is what we have as budget offsets coming from other revenue sources. The first one is school choice, circuit breaker, special education tuition. We are tuitioning in students, and the non-resident tuition, which is the SEVIS students. And we actually received that money in, so that's why that's already in the second column, because we received the money in the spring for the next fiscal year. Then the transportation revolving, it's $218,600 is what we use for an offset to driver salaries. The building rental revolving, that's one that we've been moving down because we're not taking in as much revenues, but we have $220,000 earmarked for that. And when we get into the building rentals and what we actually are going to take in, we do have money in the revolving account if we aren't able to bring in that amount of money. Preschool revolving, $45,000. That program, that would be just the amount that the peers pay in. The students do not pay tuition for the special education programs. Kindergarten revolving, as you know, when we built in that we were going to eliminate the kindergarten fee. We're doing this because we should see that income come in now in our next year's Chapter 70 money, because we didn't charge last year. And the athletic user fees, we used the same amount of $209,748 that we've been using. The fourth column over tells you what we're forecasting to receive in. The fifth column will tell you what we've received to date. And then the last column, each month I'll report where we are. So as far as the school choice number, that is right now is coming in a little less than I had forecasted. But that changes after the October report and then again in March, so I'm not concerned about that. The circuit breaker revolving, that amount is what we brought in last year, so I'm confident on that. And I talked to Ms. Splansky about the special education tuition, and she feels that the number that we have budgeted is definitely attainable. She actually thinks there'll be more, which then third column, you'll see numbers coming in there. The education fund is, we do not budget an offset on that, and that's where people can donate money to the school district on their taxes. So that is just a report of revenue. If anybody has any questions, they can email me or set up an appointment, we can talk about them, but it's pretty base. And in 3 minutes or less, I'm going to talk about the year-to-date budget report. So I've already had some questions people were asking about this. So the first thing is that transfer that you did approve of, number 444, because you saw that it was in a munis report, meant that I already did it. I did it Saturday night, and I printed this report after that so that, we can get it more aligned to what the actual expenditures are. One area that you may see some negatives and wonder why we have negatives at this point in time. If you recall last year, when I talk about this, our first column is what our appropriated budget is, which if you look at the end of the report on page 39, it says it's $65,376,407, which is what you just saw in the revenue report. The second column is a zero right now, transfers and adjustments, and that's because anything that I did transfer in, transfer number 444, it was balanced, it's a balanced transfer. However, any purchase orders that we had open in FY '21 that we didn't pay out are gonna roll into FY '21. When the city does their final roll, they've done what they call a soft roll. When they do a final one, you'll see an actual number come in there. And then we'll have a revised budget. Our revised budget will be what we carried over, plus what we received for a budget this year from the city. And then the next column is what we've spent year to date and what our encumbrances are thus far. That number will grow just as much as our amount that gets transferred in because they were already encumbered for them to be rolled over. And then our available budget will tell you. So I'm hoping that they're going to be doing that transfer early in October so that when I talk about this next month, there'll be more explanation. But if anybody has any questions right now, if I didn't catch anything, that, we can talk about that. And like all years, if I'm going to be transferring from one cost center like an AD to a CE account, I will be coming to school committee. If I can transfer within a cost center, then I can do that without moving forward here.
I have,
Quick question, Mr. Silva.
can you explain the 7.4 million in grant funds that were brought in? How does that affect the numbers?
So that would be over and above the 65. So this 65 million is what we get from the appropriate from the city.
Yeah.
And then we have federal and state grants, and we have, the revolving funds. I've told you in my revenue report where I have my offsets, and I usually bring in November or December a report of the revenue, the revolving accounts, what the balances were, what the purpose of them are, and what we plan to allocate them for.
All right, so we're going to try all year long to have this meeting stacked on top of our regular school committee meeting. And then on the opposite, every other week, we have curriculum stacked on top of committee of the whole. And that means we're really up against a time push here. So potentially, we need to get a lot better about, I need to get better about running our meeting and keeping it on time, and maybe all of us have to get better about asking our questions maybe ahead of time so that Jean can just answer them in the meeting. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Ms. Ducharme. Second. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. All those in favor? It's not debatable, so we don't ask that. No discussion. That passes 5-0, Ms. Curran. Thank you. Thank you, BevCam.
Okay, welcome everyone. Tonight is the Beverly Public School School Committee of the Whole. We are here at Beverly Middle School Library, and the date is Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. It is 7:35, and we're calling to order this evening. We are all physically present for the school committee. However, we are using the remote meeting platform to allow some members of our administrative team to join us this evening in a hybrid fashion, and this is allowed under the extended order that allows us to use technical methods to allow safe public access. Why don't we do a quick roll call just so we can confirm who's present. On our meeting platform this evening, we are joined by the Food Service Director, Christina Leal. We're also joined by the Transportation Director, Dana Krushank, our nurse leader, Jody Elder, and our principal of North Beverly, Amy Blanchard. And in person, we have Dr. Kenan McKenzie, Mr. John Milady, Ms. Kimberly Coelho, Ms. Lorinda Visnick. I'm Rachel Abel. We have Dr. Trocheck, Liz Karan, our recording secretary, Mayor Michael P. Cahill, and Ms. Jean Sherburne at the table. We are also joined by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dorothy Flaherty, our Director of HR, Aaron Brown, and our Director of Pupil Personnel and Services, Bethany Splansky. Okay, and we have members of the public. We are recording this, and our friends at BevCam are also broadcasting us on channel 99 this evening, as well as streaming on their YouTube channel. Thank you very much, BevCam, for providing that service. I'd like to call for the Pledge of Allegiance, if Ms. Coelho could lead us this evening. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. It is. And I'm realizing I don't even have my camera on, not that people want to stare at me, but, oh, and I've got my security over there, my scotch tape. Okay, this is a committee of the whole meeting. We have no opportunities for public speaking. We have a relatively brief agenda this evening. However, I would like to reserve time at the end to briefly meet an executive session that will not return to us to open session tonight. Why don't we start with the approval of our meeting records from our committee of the whole meeting that we held on August 25th. Is there a motion to approve those meeting records?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any corrections that needed to be made? Any edits? Okay. I would just say for the public that Ms. Robinson is absent at the moment, but she will do her best to join us when she can. Looking for a vote then. All those in favor of approving the meeting records? We are 6-0. And now, Dr. Trocheck, over to you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm sharing the screen with just sort of a formalized PowerPoint so that everyone can see. Join here. We have two items tonight on the superintendent's report. The first is a food service update. I wanted to make sure, first of all, we had met, the last time we met, we had not had a chance to have all of the food service information incorporated into our reopening plan, and I wanted to provide a little more detailed idea about what we are doing and how we're serving food in our cafeterias for our breakfast and lunch program. So I have invited Christina Leal to join us, and Christina has put together a presentation for us. But before you begin, Christina, I want to grab the first slide, if that's okay with you, because I want to take a moment and share with all of you that the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce has announced that the Beverly Public School Food Services team has been nominated and will receive an Inspiring Educator recognition for 2020. There are 11 members of our staff that worked throughout the height of the pandemic from March of 2020 to August of 2020. They will be guests at a dinner that will be in the honor of them and the other people who are being recognized for this. So we're very excited about that and very proud of the work that they've done, and particularly with the work that Christina has done. She has, as you know, through your experience, been an amazing leader for us and has just done everything that we could possibly have asked. And we couldn't be more grateful to you and to your team. And we're very proud of you and glad that you're getting this special recognition. So I wanted to take a minute to share that.
Thank you.
I also, and before you go on, I also want to make also note that one of our teachers is also being honored at this as well. A teacher from Ayers School, a first grade teacher, Teresa Keenan, and she is also being recognized at the dinner. So I will be there with Dr. Flaherty and Christina, and then we'll be hurrying off to the cabin at 7. So we'll be going in and out and doing a lot of things tomorrow night. So Christina, I'm going to turn it over to you. You have a lot of information to share with us, so I appreciate that.
Perfect. So we are only 10 days in, or I did these numbers when we were 10 days in. So it was from last Friday, where we are as far as our participation and how many we are serving at each of the schools. So as you can see, our breakfast numbers are pretty low. Always have struggled with breakfast. This year is no exception. And then our lunch numbers are really strong. We are running a 42% participation over the district, and each school is based on how many students are in their school based on the participation numbers. So this is what we are currently serving, and the next slide kind of shows the impact of what universal free is. So if you can, I had to go back to September of 2019 to see what numbers looked like when kids were in school. So I took the first 10 days from September of 19 compared to what they are this year. So as you can see, our breakfast numbers are down from what they were. I think students aren't used to eating in school. They did not eat there last year. So we're trying to still reacclimate them to eating in the cafeteria, coming in a little earlier to get breakfast. So as a district, we're down 144 meals from what we served in 2019, but our lunch numbers are up over 300, up in all the schools except for Centerville is the only elementary school. All the other ones have gone up, and some of them pretty significantly, as Ayers is up very high, as well as Hannah is up over 70 per day. So those are really good, and I anticipate them going up even more. So like I said, breakfast is down overall. Lunch, we are up 8.5% over 2019. Even today at the middle school, we served just shy of 800 meals, which is up significantly over even what we saw the 10-day average being. So they definitely will increase, and hopefully we'll get breakfast to go up as well. So what we are doing at the elementary schools and the middle schools is each day a hot lunch is offered as well as a cold lunch is offered daily. So students can take either a hot lunch or a cold lunch. All the bags contain the entree as well as the fruit, so it is considered a complete reimbursable meal. The milk and vegetables are offered to students so they can take them. They are not put in the bag, and help to reduce some of the waste that we saw last year when we had to put all the items in the bag. DESE does require that all students are identified for counting and claiming purposes, which is why the students do have to enter their PIN number as they go through the line. It was slow at first. Students are relearning their PIN numbers. It's going much smoother now. Breakfast is offered every morning in the cafeteria. Hopefully we get those numbers up. And currently the middle school is selling water and switches, and we're averaging about $386 a day in sales for a la carte. The high school is, we're doing as we did with pre-COVID. They're going through the line. They have the snacks. We are offering a la carte items at the grab and go, as well as new vending machines that we purchased. And we are just shy of $550 a day in our a la carte sales. So we have reinvested in our department. We got some big ticket items since the start of the pandemic to improve the department, customer service and satisfaction. We bought, our big purchase was our refrigerated freezer box truck. So if any freezer or refrigerator goes down at any of the schools, I can drive over, plug it in, and unload the food. So it's not having to transport between different schools. It could be accessible right at the school that it's at. We got a new Ovation pizza panini maker for the high school. We replaced a broken steamer over at the high school. We got 3 brand new vending machines at the high school, and they can use their Meal Magic money to access their funds with those vending machines. And we do have a new serving line purchased for the high school, but it has not arrived yet. So some challenges to keep in mind this year is very challenging, in some ways even more worse than last year. There is, I'm sure we've all heard, major truck driver shortages resulting in food not coming in, getting pushed back to different days. We're not able to get a lot of the food that we had ordered or we had planned on getting. If we do get it, there's major increases. There is currently a paper products national shortage, especially on cups. And we do have currently 4 open positions in the department that we are looking to fill. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing just 10 days in already that we've seen. And any questions or anything about any of what we're serving or anything that presented?
I think Ms. Visnick has a question.
Hi, Miss Leo. I have a few questions, so I'll ask one and then see if anybody else wants to jump in before I ask my next one. Can you please speak to what is in the vending machines?
Yeah, so we have 3 different vending machines. Unfortunately, one is currently not operational. We're still struggling a little bit with it. One is strictly all snacks. We have Smart Food in there. We have all your chips in there. We do have some cookies, snack bars, cereal bars, Rice Krispie treats. The other one is a beverage machine that has water and Gatorade and sparkling water. And the third one will be one that will have both reimbursable meals and some a la carte items.
And I'm going to keep going. And were those items previously available a la carte, and it's just making it so that there's less personal interaction to access them?
So yeah, and what we did this year, because I had to worry with all kids being able to eat free in the lines, we used to allow a la carte purchases right on the main register in the high school, but it kind of slows down the line when people are picking up or paying for snacks. So we put the vending machines next to that line, and you can no longer purchase a la carte items on that main serving line. You have to either go to the vending machines or go to the grab and go area up front.
Okay, keep going.
Are there other questions? Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. Ms. Leo, just the term universal free in this context, could you just explain it a little bit?
Yep, so the USDA approved that all students, regardless of their benefit status, can get 1 free breakfast and 1 free lunch daily. So before, they used to have to fill out an application, and they were either their benefit status was either free, reduced, or they had to pay. We are no longer looking at, you just get a free meal, and then if you do get a second meal, that is when you will have to pay.
And,
Excuse me.
and do we have a sense of how long that'll be the case?
It is currently approved through June of 2020, or 2022 rather. We don't know if it will go beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Okay. I don't think, Ms. Quayla has a question for you.
So I know back when we worked on the registers at the grab and go, if parents didn't want their kids getting like the chips and the snacks that we would sell over there, it would be a restriction on their account. It would pop up saying that they can't buy that. Are they going to have that same restriction on the vending machines with their PIN number? If the parents don't want them?
So if they put in their ID and they're not allowed, or they're above the cap of what the parent sets as a spending limit for the day, it will not give them a snack.
Ms. Wisnick has one more question for you.
How are we doing relative to our packaging, the grab and go packaging? Are we using all plastics? Are we, what kind of trash are we generating?
So at the elementary schools, we are doing paper bags. And then whatever the sandwich or item is either in a foil bag or a paper cup. If a spork is needed, we'll end up putting the spork in there. But the vegetables and the milk are only if the student wants them. So we are not having that extra trash on there. At the high school, we are on compostable trays, just like we were before, and we're slowly kind of adding in compostable trays over at the middle school as I get more staff in. Right now, they are using bags still.
So there's no plastic packaging. The most would be a spork.
The spork, or at the high school, we actually do have our salads come in plastic containers, and our deli sandwiches that are pre-made do come in plastic containers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Leal. And Dr. Trocheck, do you have a couple more slides, did I see? Okay.
Sorry about that. I know that at the last meeting, there were a number of questions that you mentioned you got from constituents about the seating at lunch and some of the questions around that. So I wanted to address some of that. As we are moving through the pandemic, we're continuing to work in all of our schools for safe opportunities for both students and staff. We really did learn a lot about mitigation strategies over the past year. We are continuing to consider minimizing the spread of COVID-19. So one of the challenges is you can't eat with a mask on. So there is no way to do that. Well, you can kind of peek it in and go out. But when we are seated for lunch, all students have their masks off. So we have been working really hard to try to maintain maximum distances for students. We do not have specific mandate guidelines that no one can sit too close, but we know that what we have done in the past has worked, and we had no transmission of the virus last year, and we're working really hard this year, especially in our elementary schools, where our students are unvaccinated at this point in time. And so we have worked on a variety of seating options that we have. Throughout the pandemic, we learned about multiple ways to provide learning opportunities and take advantage of our beautiful campuses. We have beautiful outdoor school campuses. We also have some unique strategies that we utilize. So these include the addition of tree stumps that we have on some of our campuses to create outdoor classrooms, the use of the Home Depot 5-gallon buckets. Now, I do want to clarify they do have tops that are seats, so they're not just the bucket themselves. There's a top that comes with it for a seat, as well as picnic-style lunch for some of our youngest learners. So we are working really hard to make sure that if we are going to be unmasked, we're outside, or if we're indoors, we're at a maximum distance that we can provide. We're going to continue to monitor these procedures. We know and we hope that these are temporary measures and that we can return to some of the real, more traditional use of our cafeterias. But for now, we've kind of made a commitment through at least November 1st to kind of, while we know we can be outside and while we know we can take advantage of it, to continue to do that. As I always try to do, picture's worth 1,000 words. So here's a few pictures of what our outdoor seating looks like when you're at some of our schools. There's a picture there of some students using the orange buckets to sit on to eat their lunch. There's pictures of some using blankets. At some of the schools, the students are bringing in their blankets and towels, and they sit and have picnic-style lunch outside. They use various spots on and about the campuses in all of our different schools. The focus really has been at elementary to try to do that. I know that for some people, they have some concerns, but I feel like right now, the ability to keep kids more than as far apart as they can be when they're not masked. We know that in inclement weather, they have to move inside. We're looking at various strategies and how we can do that. Again, we utilize the same ideas with the buckets and with the towels. I will assure you that no one at any time is sitting on a floor, just eating lunch off of a bare floor. We're very careful about that. We have, we've done our best to kind of, maximize the use of our spaces as we do that. So I didn't want to leave that unaddressed. I know there were some questions that some of you had, and so I wanted to bring forward and open that up for conversation or discussion if anybody had any questions.
Thank you very much. Was that a hand? Ms. Visnick?
Can you speak to the seating arrangement at the high school?
Yes, I didn't have a picture.
No picture.
We have added 27 picnic tables at the high school outside, in addition to the outdoor seating that we already have. They are not mandated to go outside. However, I think the numbers are increasing for the people that do go out. Otherwise, they are seated in the cafeteria. They are, I would say that they're encouraged to sit as far apart from each other as they can. Again, we have vaccination opportunities for our students, and so for a number of our students at the high school are already vaccinated, and so we do have to implement a lot of close contact tracing at the high school if in fact a student ends up positive, and we have to go through that whole lunch procedure. Who did you sit with? Where did you sit? We do that contact tracing, and I can give you an example. The numbers do go up pretty high sometimes, and at the high school level, because they're moving from various classes, one student might have 11 close contacts that we identify, but when we go through the process, 5 of them are exempt, maybe because they're vaccinated. Another 5 opted into test and stay, and so they're allowed to come in the morning and have a rapid test so that they can remain in. And then, again, that's optional. So that was just one particular case. We had 11 contacts, 5 were vaccinated, 5 opted into test and stay, and 1 chose not to, and they're quarantined. So the biggest challenge is to try, at least for me, is to try to minimize the number of close contacts that are forced into quarantine because they're considered a close contact, and you're automatically not exempt if you have a mask off and you're unvaccinated. It doesn't work. You're not exempt. You're a close contact if you're within 6 feet. So.
Mr. Okay. Yep. Dr. McKenzie.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. My comment was really just a simple curiosity about whether we could do an art project with those buckets and if that'll bring a little fun and levity to it and make it a little more comfortable. I know nothing about paint that does not fade in the rain and bad weather, but I thought maybe that could be another way to, just add a little bit of pleasantness to the experience.
I'll tell you, the buckets have been very utilitarian. They use them when they're going out for a class, if they bring a whiteboard and a marker and an eraser and their iPad. And so they have been, I think I like that idea. I'm sure there are some of the principals that are listening that are going to be, thinking about what they can do, or some of our art teachers. But they are a unique, I think, item that will go down in the stories that everyone carries from the pandemic, that they had their Home Depot bucket that they sat on a lot. So,
Mr. Milady.
Thank you very much. So I think some of us here have been on same series of emails, and I think this is opportunity we have to try and, I don't want to say clear the air, but present information, especially for those who might just be kind of catching up, or maybe they didn't send their child to school last year, so
Right.
for a lot of families, this is a new experience. So, one of the questions that you addressed, and I just want to hear again, is in terms of like the spacing distances, let's say at the elementary school. So
Right.
we're trying to.
Right.
Could you say it again?
So technically, there are no distancing guidelines. You don't have to stay as far apart or not. What regulates distancing and the decisions you make about it is how you're considered a close contact and where that safe range to be is. So when a student has a mask on, when both students are masked, 3 feet is considered to be the optimal distance to aim for to stay. If you're 3 feet and not very close, or for less than 15 minutes, then you're still considered a close contact, but you're exempt because you had a mask on. If you're 3 feet away and you don't have a mask on, you're no longer exempt, and so you're automatically in the category where you would have to test and stay or quarantine, unless, of course, you're vaccinated. So at our elementary levels, of course, none of our students are vaccinated in our elementary schools. So the distances that we choose, if you stay 6 feet apart and unmasked, then you're not a close contact. So that's what we aim for.
So consistently, we've been saying one of the goals for this year is to try to keep as many students in school as possible.
Absolutely.
So this
Yep.
distancing is doing that.
It is doing that, especially where we can utilize the outdoors or we can maintain a 6-foot distance, where we have less students who have to go home in quarantine. And that's the goal, to keep kids in school as much as we
I
can.
think that's very helpful, because we know that there's a lot of information out there that might be conflicting. And I think if we can say as a district that this is why, I think the why is important.
Yep.
And I think presenting the why.
You know, I think one of the things we have done in Beverly is we've made some bold decisions. And for example, we came to school every day last year when none of the districts around us did that. And we did that because our principals came up with really unique and creative ways to use the mitigation strategies to keep us in school. And we know that had a significant benefit for our kids. We believe that being in school is one of the most important things that we have to do and to keep kids in school. And so we think that the choice to stay 6 feet apart when you're unmasked, when you're eating, far outweighs the concern about how many close contacts we might have if we're within 6 feet and unmasked.
I just have one follow-up. It's a comment kind of question, and that's about the emails and letters that I've received, and also just my own experience that children aren't finishing their lunches, and I'm wondering if it's something that from a building level that we can look at what the timing is, and some of it is kids are kids, you get distracted, you're with your friends, and some of it is maybe they.
So I can assure you that at every elementary school right now, there is a 20-minute lunch and a 20-minute recess. And so, and no one's forced to leave their blanket if they're not finished eating. You're right, recess is really inviting, and that happens whether we're in the cafeteria or not. I think that Christina alluded to the PIN process, which is new and added. We didn't have to deal with that last year. We didn't have to know our PINs, and our first graders are learning how to enter a 4-digit PIN. And so I think there were some interruptions to that in the beginning, and probably even likewise at the middle school, the lines, getting the routines down. But now that the routines are down, in the middle school as well has a 20-minute lunch. So there, there's adequate time. It's just a matter, there may have been some delays in the first couple of days. And again, I would say to any parent, if your child's coming home with a full lunchbox, reach out, send an email to the teacher and ask them why. Is there something that's going on? Is there something that, that you can do, or that, that we can do to help?
This is my final statement, and I think looking at those breakfast numbers this year and seeing that they're down, I also am wondering how much of it is like school year starting, getting used to traffic and adjustments, because I think those breakfast numbers are going to go up.
Yeah, I think Christina alluded to it. We did the grab and go breakfast. So last year you took your breakfast home with you at the end of the day and you ate it at home. And I think that's a pattern that a lot of families, especially in the elementary school, got used to doing. So they were accustomed to eating their breakfast at home. And so I don't know how that impacted but I'm pretty confident that as the year goes on, our students will probably be eating more. I do know that our buses are there on time. We had a little issue in the beginning at the middle school with a couple of the runs, but we've been monitoring and making sure that as bus students come in, they have that option of breakfast. They know that they can go and get it. They have the opportunity to eat it before they go to class. So we continue to just kind of watch that and work on it.
Thank you. Ms. Visnick.
Thank you. Can you speak to the rotation, meaning that if I'm in, Miss Jones's 3rd grade class, I don't always get assigned to eat in the same place, right? Some days I get to actually sit in the cafeteria. Some days I sit outside. Some days I sit somewhere else. Is there in fact a rotation, or is it the case that, Mrs. Jones' class never gets to eat in the cafeteria?
So as best as I can speak to that, there may be some schools where they have some rotations going on, or it may only be in inclement weather that there's a rotation. I do know that at some of our schools, for example, and I think I'll speak to Ayers, each class has an assigned outdoor eating spot and they eat out there all the time. And then they have an assigned indoor spot and they eat in the same indoor spot all the time. I think at the middle school, there was a rotation that was going on in the beginning, but I actually think that's been corrected, because I think what they did was worked on spacing and moved the tables further apart and boxed off certain seats. So I think the majority of kids are sitting in the middle school at tables inside, and they're spaced 6 feet apart. So you know, they have the fortunate, they're fortunate in that beautiful building that they have 2 extremely large cafeterias, and they're able to kind of do that with the physical space that they have. So I don't want to definitively say that's not happening at an elementary or so. I don't know whether at Hannah there's a rotation going on, or at Centerville there might be a rotation going on. So I'm not specifically sure. But I would imagine if that's the case, then it's set up so that sometimes they're in one spot and sometimes they're in another spot.
Ms. Coelho?
I have a few different things. So to piggyback a little bit on John, as someone who has served lunch, especially here in the middle school, and Christina knows this as well, Miss Leal, those lines can get atrociously long, depending on the lunch that's served too. All kids want recess. All the little kids, even the middle school kids, they want some recess. But some of the lunch lines, now that they have to use the pen again, get long. And by the time the last of the kids get through that lunch line, they have to scarf down their food in like 8 minutes.
So one of the
they don't get recess.
So one of the changes that we made that you may not know is that we have 4 lunches now at the middle school instead of 2. So we're serving 5th grade eats in the first floor and the 3rd floor. So they're split up. So those serving lines are cut in half. So half of the number of students that used to go through a line go through that line now, as well as they're prepackaged and bagged already at the middle school. They're not going through a line. They're just taking a bag and pinning in. And Christina, you wanted to?
As well as each station, so all the different stations have all options. So it used to be cold was only at this one, or hot was only at this grab and go. All the 6 different stations have the same food. So you can go to anyone and get something.
Okay.
And I would say, I don't want to say it, I wish Mrs. Oliver were here. I believe actually that 5th grade goes to recess before lunch. So they're getting their recess prior to lunch. And I think that 6th grade goes to recess at the teacher's discretion, either attached at the end of their lunch or some other time during the day. So that was some big changes that we've made. The lunch, just in general, we used to have all of the 5th grade in one cafeteria for a lunch. We now have them in 2 cafeterias, and all 4 grades are scattered like that.
Okay. So it wasn't just the middle school, but I bet if we served some nachos for breakfast, those breakfast counts would go up, huh?
What's the other one? There's a couple of them that are just big takers.
Pizza, nachos, French
Yeah.
toast, you name it. Yeah, those are the long lunch lines. But I've had some, as well as my own kid, I've had some other kids reach out to me as Alex's mom, that they get stuck in 2nd or 3rd lunch. My own son gets stuck in a later lunch as well. And he said by the time he even gets through the long line at the high school, that there's not much left. And they wind up just going out to the vending machines to get snacks. It's happened
So
a
I can
couple
pass
times.
that on. That's the first I've heard of that one, but I can certainly pass that on, and I'm sure Christina can, we can talk about that with Mrs. Taylor. I know that there's a new line coming, and there's some changes at the high school. So, again, that's the first I've heard of it, but I'm happy to take a look and find out what I can learn about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Another
do I have
topic?
anything? I just had, as my other topic, really, it's just an update. You know that we have a mask mandate. That mask mandate is going to remain in place in all schools. So to date, we haven't had any further guidance from the Department of Ed. I know that original guidance had said that the possibility, if on October 1st you had vaccination rates at 80%, then that would allow a district at a local level to reconsider the use of masks in the buildings. At this point in time, I've gotten no further guidance. We're not really close to the 80%, which you'll see in a minute when I provide you some data. But I just wanted to let you know, whenever the guidance comes forward, I'll bring it forward to the committee, and it would come to the committee for consideration. So I just thought I wanted to straighten that out.
Ms. Wisnick?
I want to say something, and then I have 2 questions. I think that we got some pushback for having school on a primary day. And, well, I know I received some pushback about that. And every year we go around that mulberry bush when we vote on the calendar. And so I think that, kind of like John said earlier, this is our opportunity to try to communicate and let people know how we make our decisions. And we have to approve the calendar a long time ago. And, we bet on the fact that we wouldn't have a primary. That said, we did have a primary, and I think that there were some issues that were raised in that primary, including but not limited to people not being able to find parking in certain locations. Now, I hope that we don't have that situation again, because we typically don't have school during a voting day. Like, we won't have school during the big election. But I guess I want to go on record as saying, if we ever choose again to take that risk, then we need to make sure that we do our, like at Centerville, we used to put all the teachers at Harry Ball and shuttle them, ask them to park at Harry Ball and then shuttle them down to the school, so that the remaining parking, now the parking lot's bigger now, but so that the parking lot was available for voters. So that wasn't the case in all our schools, and there were reports that people couldn't find parking to get in to vote. So that's thing number one. We kind of need to, as a group, commit to doing that.
Relate to masking in schools? Does this relate to masking in schools?
Well, yes, because then the voters who came in, my school where I vote said masks were required, but there were reports of people coming in and not being masked. And so I asked you about that, and so I think it would help if you could speak to that, as well as, when people are coming into the building, right, there's three problems: parking, masking, and the police relative to voting. And so if you could speak to that, so that the people who are watching from home are going to watch on video can understand what control we have over that as.
Happy to.
Awesome.
Yep. So first, I did not receive multiple reports of challenges around anything. I heard one report that was reported from a school staff about a mask situation. I actually reached out to the mayor, who reached out to the Secretary of State, who responded to us that in the United States of America, the right to vote trumps the opportunity to be in a building, right? So we could not allow someone to come in and vote because they were not wearing a mask. However, for everyone that walked in the door, they were offered a mask, and if they refused, we sort of watched and made sure that they entered and exited, in an expedient amount of time, and we kept distances from them, right? So that's one thing that was done. Every single, and I'm not sure, and I did see your communication, and we'll figure out. I don't know if there was just a high number of voters at that time at that building. Every single staff had alternative parking arrangements for their staff and did leave the open spaces in front of the building. So they may have been full when that person or when someone went to a building, but I actually saw all of the communications that principals had sent out in the 4 elementary schools that we hold voting. And also, the final thing I would say is, in terms of the police presence, they're there to work the election, and so they don't monitor the front doors, they monitor the election space. So they are certainly available if we need them, and they were helpful in a couple of situations if we had some requests for assistance, but the job that they have is to be in the polls, not at the front door of the school. I personally did not hear a lot. I received one email. I think that was the email that we shared. I heard feedback from the leadership team that the turnout was actually quite low in most of their buildings. They didn't have any concerns. They utilized their staff in a way, and they utilized their buildings in a way that there was an interaction with voters and the students while they were there. I'll take the feedback back to the principals around the parking. I think they worked really hard to try to do alternate opportunities for parking and leave spaces. And so I'll just, I can share that with them, that there were some concerns about that. But the masking, I think we really only had one instance that I was made aware of where there was an actual refusal to wear the mask, and that was monitored on site by the police officer and the principal in that building. So, but it was we had the same question: can we make them? Can we not let them in? But we definitely can't not let them in. We have to allow them to go in and vote. So that's how we handled it.
Thank you. And do you have more on masking?
Do I have, I no, but I have my quick little update in terms of the district dashboard. I just want to share the data. I told you that I would share it with you each time we come together. The district, this is the most recent. It's updated on Tuesdays and on Fridays, so this was updated yesterday. As you can see that we had 7 current active cases. We've had a total of 34 cases up to this point in the school year. It's spread out. This dashboard is available on our website. You can go right onto the website and see it, and our nurse leader, Jody, keeps it up to date on a regular basis on Tuesdays and Fridays. These are the 7-day average data for Beverly. The most recent data was 21.57, so you can see we're kind of holding in the same sort of average daily incidence rate per 100,000. We're hoping that we begin to see that go down. That would be the best news that we could get. Just a reminder on contact tracing, we continue our efforts to trace contacts in every case. The protocols are applied. We are currently, we have 11 students in quarantine right now across the district. That's across all 8 of our schools. We have 8 students who are participating in test and stay, which means they're coming to school every morning, they're getting a rapid test, and they're remaining as long as they're negative. Of the 8, I think 4 are out of, have met their number of consistent days, and so they're out of the protocol now. And we also have symptomatic testing in place. That means that if a student goes to the nurse's office and doesn't feel well, one of the things we can do is offer them a rapid test right there on site. We did have, that just began, and we did have a student do that. And the student still goes home because they're still sick, but we are able to offer them that understanding of whether or not it's COVID, as well as to know whether we need to do any contact tracing within the classroom. So that is up and running. Our vaccination rates, and again, I apologize for not having more. I think it said fully, the sheet that was sent to me said fully vaccinated, but I believe it's 1 dose, because I've had that conversation just anecdotally with our nursing staff that we still have a number of students who are 1 dose. So if you are 1 dose, you need to go get that 2nd dose. It's really important. Our rates 12 to ages, this is all of Beverly, not just the Beverly schools. I will come to you in a couple of weeks with the data. The next meeting that we have, the next regular school committee meeting, Jody will have all of the data of just Beverly Public School students in grades 7 through 12 by grade level. We are holding our,
I want to point out, you said you have August 26th there, but I think maybe you
I
need a
forgot
different
to,
date.
yes, I'm sorry.
That's as of last Thursday,
It was
that number?
9/16.
Yeah,
Yep,
thanks.
this is the 9/16 data. Sorry, thank you for pointing that out. I'll fix that before I put this up on the website. And then finally, we have our 2nd mobile clinic at the middle and high school tomorrow. We've sent out registration links. We've sent out information to families. You can sign your child up, whether they need their 2nd dose. And if they do need their 2nd dose, they need to bring their vaccination card with them to school. So if you're watching and your child's coming in, but you also can register for your first vaccination. Those clinics will be held tomorrow. And then I have just some updates from Jody Elder. The nursing staff has been fully trained, so all of our nurses are fully trained in the COVID test and stay and the symptomatic testing program. They're now up and running. The COVID dashboard is current on our website, so please check it out. You can see cases through the end of yesterday. Again, repeat on the 2nd dose vaccine clinic for tomorrow. And we've also scheduled an additional vaccine clinic on 10/8, and that's in conjunction with the afternoon and evening athletic events that we're holding, sort of an event, a 2-night event of soccer, girls soccer, boys soccer, field hockey, and football, having an opportunity to play under the lights on the turf field. So we'll be having a vaccination clinic available at that event as well. And that's all I have.
Okay. I don't see any hands for questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Jurczyk. We have a few orders of business coming from the chair tonight. In the meeting just prior this evening, in our Facility and Finance Subcommittee meeting, by a vote of 4 with 1 abstention, the FNF has accepted with gratitude a gift from the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters to put a 12-foot linear wall ball on the high school property, and it was with the insight from Mr. Collins, our DPW director, the principal, Betty Taylor, our athletic director, and Dan Keefe, and I think that, as was presented in the subcommittee, the gift is going to be a great addition, not only for lacrosse players, but for other sports as well. So the motion this evening would be for the committee of the whole to accept with gratitude the placement of a goods rather than gifts and goods rather than monetary. This 12 linear foot, it comes in 2 6-foot sections and is going to be put on a bed of gravel that the DPW prepares. So I guess I'll make that motion and then we can have a conversation. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Tried to summarize that. I'm not sure if you've been following along with F and F, but if there's any questions, I'm sure Ms. Visnick would be able to address, or Dr. Trocek. I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, all those in favor of accepting this gift with gratitude? We have 7-0. Thank you. 6-0. Thank you, sorry. She's here in spirit. Okay. Next, in the packet that Donna presented to us on Friday, we have the excerpt from this year's conference for the Resolutions Committee. These are the items that the delegates will entertain in the Delegate Assembly on November 6th, I believe it is. At our last meeting, we designated Dr. McKenzie as our representative, and Ms. Visnick would be the alternate to serve. What we need to do as a body is to give some direction to our delegate on these topics. And my hope was that we might be able to entertain that this evening, because my understanding is that our next regular school committee meeting might be a little bit longer, and that would give adequate time for our delegate to be prepared. So there's only 9 resolutions this year. My hope was that people would have an opportunity to look at them, and that I might forego reading them entirely, but maybe I could just read the therefore be it resolved items. And if we do decide that we're going to need more time, there will be an opportunity in October at our next committee of the whole, perhaps, to finish up any directions that we need to. What's that? No, that's all right. Okay. The first one is a resolution dedicated funding for school-based clinics and services. The sponsor was the Framingham School Committee. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC support proposals that would establish dedicated funding for school-based physical health and mental health clinics and services. Do we have a motion on how the school committee would direct our delegate to vote on such a resolution? Ms. Visnick.
Madam President, I wonder if we can't try to take the approach that MASC takes on these resolutions, namely to ask if anybody has an objection, if we can vote on like a batch of them together.
Sure.
And then talk only about the ones that anybody has an objection to make it go quicker.
Sure. So let me read all 9 therefore be it resolves. I think that might behoove us. Okay. So we'll put a parking lot on dedicated funding for school-based clinics and services. The second resolution was submitted by the MASC Board of Directors about homework gap and Wi-Fi internet access. And this is, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees files for and supports legislation which seeks to provide free broadband internet to all K-12 students in Massachusetts. Okay, we'll put a pin in that. The next resolution 3 is IDA Full Funding Act. And this resolution would, therefore be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Congressional Delegation to introduce and promote the passage of the IDA Full Funding Act. It's kind of short. Number 4 is about recess. This was also submitted by the MASC Board of Directors. Therefore, be it resolved that the MASC supports legislation, current bills S-383 and H-695, calling for at least 20 minutes of uninterrupted, supervised, safe, and unstructured free play recess per day, which cannot be excluded from structured learning time requirements, and may not increase the total number of hours required in the school year for Massachusetts elementary school students. Put a pin on that. Resolution 5 is related to zero tolerance policies. Again, the MASC Board of Directors introduced this to the Resolutions Committee. And this one is therefore be it resolved that the MASC calls upon the legislature to enact or amend legislation, current bill Senate 344 and House 664, to encourage the use of restorative, therapeutic, and educational approaches to incidents whenever possible over the use of quote-unquote zero tolerance policies in order to provide students the best chance to remain in the public school systems of the Commonwealth. Put a pin in that. Number 6, the resolution is an alternative to MCAS. Again, sponsored by the Board of Directors of MASC. Therefore, be it resolved that the MASC calls upon the legislature to establish a commission to research and analyze alternative means for students to demonstrate academic achievement, which can be used to satisfy graduation requirements for individual students and accountability standards for Massachusetts public schools and school districts. And it looks like there's current bills, Senate 293 and House 612. Resolution 7 is about school committees and receivership. This again, Board of Directors. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC file for and support legislation which seeks to preserve the authority of the elected body of school committee as provided by Mass General Law, Chapter 69, Section 1K, by deleting the words "and school committee," quote unquote, as noted, and by inserting the following sentence: "Nothing in this section shall permit the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education or the Commissioner to remove the authority of the school committee." Resolution 8 is about electric school buses. Therefore, be it resolved that the MASC petition Congress to appropriate $30 billion for improving the electrical supply infrastructure and providing electric buses and charging stations. Resolution 9 is prohibiting the use of Native American mascots. Again, this is an MASC Board of Directors led resolution. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees supports legislation calling for regulations prohibiting public schools from using an athletic team name, logo, or mascot, which names, refers to, represents, or is associated with Native Americans, including aspects of Native American cultures and specific Native American tribes. And there is an asterisk. This is currently in the Senate Bill 294, but the asterisk does say that the regulation would not prohibit Native American tribes as identified by the Commission on Indian Affairs located within the boundaries of the Commonwealth from choosing to use Native-related names and logos for sports teams comprised of its tribal members. And there's a little bit more to that. So, as Ms. Visnick suggested, and as MASC did last year in the Delegate Assembly, we took a motion to advise approval of all, or if there were any that wanted further discussion, we would name the numbers for any that warranted more discussion so that we could approve in bulk the ones that we didn't feel needed discussion. Mayor Cahill.
On number 4, could I just ask Dr. Trochek to kind of refresh us on how we're handling, I know we meet our time on learning requirements, and we do have recess built in our elementary now through 6th grade. Could you just kind of walk us through that?
So this particular is specific to whether or not it would be considered three times. This is specific to whether it would be considered into the structured learning time. The elementary schools, the amount of hours for structured learning time is 900 hours. We actually have extra, because of the hours that we go to school right now, we fit in our 20-minute recess time, but so it's not really, but I think that there are other school districts where that's problematic, which is why they're addressing it here. We have a 20-minute recess for all students K through 6, minimum of 20 minutes. And again, for some, if we were, 20 minutes is what we have right now, and we fit it into our schedule. If we were to expand that, we would run out of structured learning time.
So you're saying we're set without this, and there are districts whose school days are shorter. and
Either
are-
shorter or they're looking for longer periods of it, but this particular request, I think, is not only that you have the recess, but that it's counted as structured learning time. Right now, when we do the formula, and we submit our formula as to how many minutes of structured learning time we have to deduct any time that's recess.
But that's my point in asking it.
Yeah.
So there are districts whose days are shorter.
They must
And they're not going to meet their time on learning hour requirements if they were to take 20 minutes a day. Look, we all know the kids need recess, but those districts need longer school days,
could be
not to cut their time on learning.
Right.
Those are their local.
And I don't
those are
only
in
speak
their
to that. I do
contracts,
know
and those are their
formulaically, we are fine with the 20 minutes. It fits into our schedule, but I guess if there was going to be an expansion or whatever.
Right.
I think the point they're making is that they don't want to increase it from 900 to say 935 hours.
In order to just fit in recess. Right.
Yeah, I would leave this one aside. It doesn't sound like something we should support. Those districts, I know that it's in their contracts and they need to negotiate that, but they need longer school days. If their days aren't long enough from the sounds of it.
We'll put resolution 4 aside at the moment. We'll handle that separately. Are there any others that we want to hold aside? So we'll hold number 4 aside for the moment. Are there others that we want to hold aside for discussion and individual vote? I'm not seeing any hands, so why don't we take a motion that we're supporting the balance? So that would be Resolution 1, dedicated funding for school-based clinics and services. Resolution 2, homework gap and Wi-Fi internet access. Resolution 3, IDA Full Funding Act. Skipping number 4, going to number 5, zero tolerance policies. 6, alternative to MCAS. Resolution 7 is school committees and receivership. 8, electric school buses. And 9, prohibiting the use of Native American mascots. So we're looking for a motion to advise our delegate to a vote in the affirmative on
So
those
moved.
resolutions. So I was looking for a motion.
So moved.
So moved, sorry.
Sorry.
Couldn't hear. In a second. Thank you, Mr. Milady. Do we need to have any discussion about moving forward with approval on those items? Okay, all those in favor? 6-0. Now we'll look for a motion. I think, the mayor, you were going to make a motion that we abstain or object to number 4.
My sense would be abstain. I mean, you folks who have been at the meetings, I haven't been in the sessions. Does an abstention seem to make sense here? If unless you want to discuss supporting it. I mean, I was just expressing my
Anecdotally,
thought.
we are in the minutes as being the district that objected a lot last year. We are unsuccessful. So abstaining might make us a little bit more popular with the group because the meeting went a little long.
I'm happy to make a motion
But-
to direct our delegate to abstain on number 4.
Okay. And then the delegate always, when they're actually in the assembly, as motions are filed to change the language or change the resolution, obviously vote with your conviction based on, our basic guidance here, so. Okay, so a motion to abstain on resolution number 4 regarding recess. All those in favor of abstaining? Oh, sorry. Those motions, okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Can I have some discussion?
sure.
So I think that you're absolutely right. I would, if I were the delegate and I'm the backup this year. So it certainly is more comfortable to abstain than to object, or offering alternatives is difficult. But from my point of view, I think there is strength in numbers, and the way I read this, it's to me equivalent to saying when we have our morning meeting and we sit in circle and we're allowed to eat our breakfast and connect with one another. That is time on learning. That is important, right? Relationship building. So I personally support this, and if there's districts who need this, then they need it. I would much rather allow a child to go out and run and play, and there is learning that takes place You know that as a coach as well as anybody else. And so personally, I support this. I, as a delegate, I will vote however the group tells us to vote. But I just think that that's worth saying. Who are we to, tell some other district that they need to lengthen their school days? What's best for children, and what's best for children is that they have recess. It's also best for children if they get, a 6-hour or 7-hour school day. But I think that the strength of MASC voting and then supporting these things, sometimes we should be good neighbors and support other school districts if somebody brought this forward, or in this case, it was actually the MASC Board of Directors that brought it forward. So that's all. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Dr. McKenzie.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I would tend to agree only because, of course, we have evidence about the benefits of recess. But I think even in our own district, we talked last year about how much better the behavioral outcomes were from children being outside more during the pandemic. And so although it was not recess time, just the time outside. And so I'm not sure what the school day length issue could be in these instances. So I read this as something that was affirmative for ensuring that recess happens. Because there are instances where recess can happen and it's turned into tutoring time and other types of things. So I don't think I can necessarily say we're speaking to the length of the school day, but I think if we were supporting it, what we would be doing is affirming the need for children to have that kind of outlet. So I don't know if we know enough about why other schools aren't doing it. So I'm just wondering if that's part of the concern. But I think on its face, I am supportive of making sure that districts make that a part of their day and a priority.
Thank you. Are there others that wanted to speak? Okay, so the motion on the table right now would be a motion to abstain. So if you wanted our district to abstain, you would vote in the affirmative. But if you don't want that to be our direction to our delegate, then you would vote in the nay or negative. Then we can make another motion. Okay, so those that are wishing to abstain, vote aye. Okay, and those that do not wish to abstain, nay. The nays have it. Is there an alternate motion that you wish to make? Yes, Ms. Visnick?
I'll make the motion that we support this resolution number 4 on recess.
Okay, is there a second?
I'm sorry, I guess I should say we direct our delegate to vote.
In the affirmative?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and Ms. Coelho, you were seconding? Is there any more discussion? Those, oh, yeah, Ms. Coelho?
I kind of understand what Ms. McKenzie's talking about, because sometimes there are children that might not have finished a test or something like that, and they're made to stay inside for recess time to get their work done instead of going outside. So I understand where she's coming from, and I do support that.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like we're ready to vote. Mayor Cahill?
I just want to say one thing. I understand. I think we're all in the same place kind of emotionally, what we want for the kids. And my point was, and I'm fine with how this is going. I mean, it's not an issue in our district based on us having a day that's a bit longer, the ability to fit in that recess without cutting into statutorily required time on academic learning. That's my issue, is that we know there are districts who have shorter school days. I know it's easier said than done, but we at a certain point in time, some number of contracts ago, negotiated a longer day than we had. And for good reason, and I'm glad we have that time. Some districts, I think, also need to travel that path, because the cutting into that academic learning time is problematic. And your point, Ms. Visnick, about the social emotional learning, as well as the straight ability to run around and be ready to go back and learn, that's all important too. So anyway, not to belabor it,
Sure.
we have a shot at not being here till 10 o'clock tonight. So.
Well, I'll just add, a wise person today said, don't let good be the enemy, or perfect be the enemy of good. There we go. So, yeah, I was obviously abstaining because I believe in the importance of recess. I think it's important to us, but I also believe that the rigor of our core mission for education is important too, and I don't want any trade-offs. But with that, I think we're ready to vote to instruct our delegate to vote in the affirmative on resolution number 4. All those in favor? 5 and opposed, 1. Okay. So, Dr. McKenzie, you have our authority to vote in the affirmative on all of these unless they change, and then vote your convictions. Okay.
Thank you.
I had put an agenda item here just to talk about the agenda for our regular school committee meetings. As we know, that's our one opportunity per month where we do allow members of the public to address the body. What is typically supposed to happen is it's an address to the body, not to individuals, and it's not for response. I know we all try our best to adhere to that. We do have the option to remove that from our agenda if it's something that interests the body. However, when we do provide the opportunity, everyone has their First Amendment rights, and we need to make sure that we're clear, and especially me as the chair, are clear with members of the public that come up that they have a time limit and that they do sign up for a topic that they're intending to discuss. So this was just an opportunity. I put an asterisk next to it in case anyone felt so inclined to change the way that we set our agenda. If there is no change or no motion tonight, we will still have the opportunity for public speak at our regular school committee meetings, which are on the second Wednesday of the month. Ms. Visnick.
Are there any boundaries that we can put in other than the time limit, in the sense that I believe one of the speakers last time was not even a Beverly resident. They were maybe a Beverly business owner. So I just wonder, right, to try to keep it to our own community. Yeah, I just wonder whether we can put any boundaries in place.
Our sign up does ask for that. We'll make sure that our future sign-ups are very explicit. What is your Beverly residential address? You know, it's hard for us to verify on the fly when people are signing up where they actually live. But we will make that more apparent from the agenda and from the chair. So we do have that ability to limit it to our residents. The downside of that is often our educators maybe don't live in Beverly but wish to address us on an issue, and so we would want to consider that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so for the body, I mean, I think the important thing that we have to remember is it's an opportunity for them to address us. We don't have to respond. I think Dr. Trochek does a good job in some instances of providing more information right at the time of the address, so that, you know, people leave the meeting feeling like they were heard and have more information. But we, you know, can control our agendas, and if we don't want to invite the public, we don't have to legally, but when we do, we can set a time limit, and we have to respect the First Amendment. So that's the trade-offs. Okay, I'm not seeing any motions on that. The last order of business would be to go into executive session. So if we don't have any more discussion on the committee updates, the chair will move to vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose 7 is to review and approve the minutes of our September 8th meeting that we had in executive session. I have those. They weren't in our packet, but I have copies for people to glance at. And then purpose number 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with Beverly Teachers Unit Association A, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee, and I promise it will be short. So that is my motion. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. That was a second though, right? Okay. This requires a roll call vote. So I'm going to just go around the table. Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Milady?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes. And Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, BevCam, so much. It's 8:44. We're going to be signing off here, and we wish everyone a good week. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. you.